So, Lawrence Kenwright, here we are again. Must be 6 months since the last time we were chatting together. I guess a lot has happened since then. I know a lot's happened with me, and I know a lot's happened in Liverpool. I'm sure a lot's happened with you. Tell us how you've been and what you've been up to.
Well, I've submerged myself into a little bit like Liverpool politics. I've tried to understand all the various layers of what's been going on, and I've been quite upset at how the city has delivered a verdict or non-verdict on the transgressions of the politicians that represent the people that voted them into power. I think I was quite excited when the Max Caller came out, the report that is.
And that's what we discussed on the last podcast, wasn't it? Yeah.
But that's the litmus test, if you like, for what's transpired up to that point. Now we have a situation of not knowing what's gone on, and I'm trying to piece that together, because I do believe the worst thing for the city is to be left in some sort of quagmire where we don't know what's going on, or whether our politicians are fraudulent or corrupt, whether our businessmen have been involved in that, and just whether really we should continue on with the same political people that we have who control the city now. Because I believe if Joe Anderson is guilty, and that's not for me to say, that the mechanism that supported Joe is still in power, and that raises questions as to why Keir Starmer hasn't actually gone to the team that supported Joe and suspended them as well. Because clearly if Joe was getting suspended from the party and had to stand down, are we saying that he'd done this on his own? Well, clearly not so. On that basis, who else did? And now that Labour Party are now in total control over the investigation internally, as Steve Rotherham, as the Metro Mayor, is now the chair, are we now saying that Labour Party are going to bring to the people of the city the transgressions of that Labour Party? Or do we think they're going to bury them underneath the rug? And I think possibly that is the case.
Because last time we spoke, we kind of covered a lot of topics, and we went into some level of detail in relation to the multiple police investigations into Liverpool City Council. I think there was 3 investigations that we talked about. And we talked about the Max Caller report, which is the government's commissioned report into the fraud and corruption in Liverpool City Council, I guess. And we talked about Joe Anderson's arrest and all of the other things. And it seems 6 months later that nothing has happened in terms of anyone being brought to justice, or this investigation into the corruption of the council doesn't seem to have progressed. Feels like it's another case of sweeping it under the carpet. Now, in terms of the police investigation, has that made any further progress, or is that just kind of faded off into the background?
Well, the first investigation was Operation Sheraton, which was nothing to do with Joe as far as arrests goes, but Joe was questioned, and there was a non-truth that came out through the press, which was Joe, as all charges to do with Joe have now been dropped. Well, that wasn't the case, because Joe was never charged or arrested for Operation Sheraton. But there were various people who have now been charged for that operation. But Joe was never really the main part of that investigation. Where Joe is still under investigation is Operation Aloft. Now, Operation Aloft with Operation Venetic, I believe, are joined at the hip. But that's just me believing that, by the way, based on my knowledge and understanding of the city and how its business people, gangsters and politicians have amalgamated almost into one. But that's just my view. That's not one that's based on people getting arrested for that.
There was some recent arrests for unnamed people as part of Operation Aloft that I read in the Echo. Didn't say who it was, but they said there was an ongoing part of Operation Aloft, which tells me that police are still taking it serious if they're going through people's doors and arresting them.
Well, there's a couple of things here. First of all, Operation Aloft has probably cost the police around 10 million now. Operation Sheridan was up to 6. This is far larger than Operation Sheridan. At some point, through proceeds of crime, poker, and I think me and you had a bit of a discussion about this last time, where 50% of monies received goes to the government
pocket,
and the other 50%, and we had a discussion about that. And I understand how that gets distributed locally in order for them to carry on doing their job. And I believe the streets are better off with more police on the beat than not. And I think most people would believe that as well. The problem was that 50% of that money comes to, in my view, an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
So this is a problem for the people that were involved in Operation Aloft. I don't think the police are going to let this go.
They're in too deep, aren't they?
In the same way that our politicians want to let it go.
Of course. But it's like, it feels like you said, and I think it's a really important point, for all of this alleged corruption that was going on in Liverpool City Council under Joe's watch, I guess as a citizen of Liverpool, a couple of questions I've got is, well, how did he get away with it? Because he couldn't have done it on his own. Right? And if he didn't do it on his own, then that means there was a structure, an institution that allowed this corruption to happen and flow through the city council. What's being put in place to stop that from happening now? Right? Or is the same structure and the same mechanisms that were operating under Joe's leadership, are they still in place? And is Joe just a scapegoat? Is it still going on behind the scenes?
Well, clearly the old regime is still there.
Yeah.
I think Joanne Anderson, I don't think, well, I'm pretty confident is not non-corruptible. The team that she's put in place.
Joanne Anderson is the mayor that followed Joe Anderson. There's no relation.
Such a strange thing, that, isn't it? But yes. So I don't think that the new regime that sit at the top table are as corruptible or as corrupt as the last. But I do think that there is a member of that cabinet which has been caught doing exactly the same things since Joanne Anderson has taken over as mayor. But if I can just say that I do believe Joe Anderson was the best leader we've ever had. I just think he got discoloured along the way with the wrong friendships, and I think I've said that last time on the podcast. I think Liverpool will miss a leader such as Joe, but we won't miss the clear fraud and corruption. The politicians that run the city now decided to do a vote on what regime we wanted as a council. Did we want it led by cabinet? Did we want it led by a leader? Or did we want it led by a mayor? It came in as 40% for mayor, 30% for a leader, for cabinet, and 20% for leader. And the council picked the leadership model. And the reason why they picked the leadership model is due to the fact that I think at the next election, if there was to be a mayor, they would have lost that election because of the fraud and corruption.
Well, let's get to that in a second, because that's interesting on its own. But so let's just clarify this. So the Labour Party had a democratic vote amongst its members. Was its members or was it open to the people of Liverpool? And what kind of governing structure that the people of Liverpool would prefer rather than, or to determine whether the model we have now is successful? And the vote went against the decision they made, is that right?
Yeah, so but what makes it even worse is the 40% that voted for the mayor would have been tarnished with Joe's leadership.
Yeah.
And the fact that they would have known that there is a definite negative in that leadership role. And even so it had that definite negative, it still came out as 40%, as opposed to what was chosen, which is the leadership model, which only had 20+%.
Because the leadership model is what we had before the mayor, wasn't it? So the council that had the majority in the council would then appoint a leader from within. Yeah, and that was what was put to one side for the mayoral model.
Yeah, so now there's not going to be a mayoral model.
Because that's a big change from the last podcast we did, and we were talking about, an independent being able to challenge Labour's hegemony over local politics, and it was a vulnerability for Labour Party, because with these allegations of fraud and corruption, there's a likelihood that a large chunk of the voter base would choose another option, whoever that may be. It was an independent, running on this fraud and corruption platform. Now, you've been out there on multiple podcasts talking about this, and it seems quite coincidental that the Labour Party have decided to move against this mayoral model and back to the party leader. Yeah, do you think that's trying to block any potential run from independent people trying to challenge their control and monopoly over the city?
Of course. So let's just go on to Liverpool has a mayor at the moment.
Yeah.
That will be disbanded come May.
So that's the end of the mayor's office in Liverpool.
So Liverpool have already selected their new leader. It's clear it's far more difficult for the people of Liverpool to vote for 85 new councillors rather than voting for one single person. The last hopeful was Stephen Yip, who come in second and done really, really well. The criticism I have of that run is not as on him in any way whatsoever. A real, great stand-up guy. Was because he's such a nice guy, he never actually pierced through and told the people what was actually happening. And his main message was collaboration between all parties, when really what he should have been saying, I'm here to stop fraud and corruption.
He mightn't have had the inside info that you've got, though.
Oh no, everyone knew.
Yeah.
Everyone knew.
Okay.
So sometimes nice people shouldn't be in politics, and he's a very nice person. I'm not saying, by the way, he shouldn't run again, and I'm not saying, by the way, that he shouldn't be.
Well, he can't run again. It's over, isn't it?
Well, but he could be a leader. He could still be a leader. There's no reason for anyone to control that position until the people of the city decide whether there should be a new party that should run against the Labour Party. And let's not forget, the Lib Dems, at this moment in time, who are the opposition, don't actually have more than 30 names to fill 30 seats. So even on their best day, they need, 43 to get control. They can't get control because they only have 30 names.
So Labour, by default, could have a landslide and have total control over the council and the monopoly over power in Liverpool once again, despite all of these, very valid, credible, persuasive allegations of fraud and corruption within the Labour Party in Liverpool. And I don't think anyone even denies it, do they, really? Everyone knows what's going on. But it seems to me as if this move to move away from the mayoral model is just to cover up the fraud and corruption that they've been at it in Liverpool. And they're doing an internal investigation. I mean, anyone knows that when you do an internal investigation, is that it's not going to reveal the truth to the outside people looking in. It's to cover up and mitigate the damage that's done from the allegations of fraud and corruption. And the Labour Party, aren't going to be exposing the inner machinations and the workings of Liverpool City Council. And that's why I think in some ways, Joe Anderson has been presented as the scapegoat.
Of course.
Because if he goes down or if he takes all of the damage, then people will less likely look at the Labour Party because they feel as if there's been a bloodletting or they feel as if there's been a broom sweeping clean. But I don't think that's the case. I think Keir Starmer has got tight control over what's happening in Liverpool Labour Party. But, haven't we got external government ministers that are meant to be conducting this investigation into the council?
The government ministers are only there to look forward, not to look back.
Yeah.
I think if we go wider realm here, if you look at what happened with the PPE, coronavirus, clearly there is fraud and corruption there. Clearly, so that's Conservatives now smeared and hopefully proven one day of clear fraud and corruption. Now you've got the Labour Party now, locally, where money is spent, getting sort of tarnished with that brush. At some point, politicians in general stop thinking about left or right, blue or red. and start saying, actually, politicians can't afford to have another smear on the other side of the fence, because actually it's politicians who will suffer in general. So I think that's what we're seeing here now. I think the Conservatives don't wish to have the fight. They have allowed Labour Party to come in and clean up their own mess. And with that, night follows day, come May, Labour Party will be the only party that can win. And don't forget, that will be delivered with only just 15% of the population voting for Labour Party.
Yeah.
So 15% of the Liverpool population will vote for how this city is run for the next 4 years. Based on the same criteria, based on the same rules, based on the same problems, based on friendships, gaining positions with no knowledge. So it's not just about fraud and corruption. This is also about Liverpool ensuring that it makes the most of what it has, delivered by the people with the knowledge. So let's come away from fraud and corruption for a minute, because you know that drum's getting beat loud and clear. There'll certainly be documentaries done about this in the not too distant future, irrespective of what goes on with cover-ups within the political circles. My argument is also, and probably more so, let's go to the future, but actually
What's the solutions?
Well, the solutions are that we shouldn't go along just simply with the Labour Party.
No.
We should be almost non-political and put into those positions the people who are best to serve those positions, who understand those positions, that there isn't a learning curve. How many people, ministers, MPs, councillors, run into positions where they have no knowledge beforehand and have to learn while running on the job, which is extremely difficult. And I don't think anyone is that intelligent that they have a learning curve of what in any business would be a 5-year learning curve before you truly understand and know what you're doing. So for a new leader to come in and then pick out his councillor positions to run all the various areas, which are clearly failing, by the way, you know, our children which are fostered or put into care, it's now costing us £250,000 per annum per child. That's clearly too much. And everyone knows that when there's a government contract or a local council contract that's given out, it's normally 2 or 3 times more than what it would be if it was in the business arena. So it's about bringing that skill set to the fore and making sure that we're no longer getting ripped off as a city, but we're actually making the most of our assets as well and not giving them away to friendships.
Yeah, because that was one of the biggest things that came from speaking to you last time, because I hadn't really looked into it. Right? And I did look into it, and I was like, wow, this is just...
It's too big.
It's massive, yeah. And that's the problem with public money. It's public money. It's not your money, right? So it's easy for you to spend, isn't it? It's easy for you to give away because it's not yours. You haven't earned it.
And no one's accountable.
And no one's accountable, yeah. And I think the lack of transparency within Liverpool City Council and politics in general, you know, it enables corruption. It enables people to, you know, spend this money willy-nilly without thought of the consequences or any accountability. And you know, I don't know what the solution to that is, other than to reduce the amount of public money going in. You know, is lowering taxes better than raising taxes? So how would you go about? How do you think the best way forward for Liverpool as a city, in terms of increasing our prosperity and our standard of living? Because right now, due to the mass propaganda in the media, we're beaten on a daily basis with this idea that, you know, it's either eat or freeze. You know, the idea that cost of living's creeping up, and you know, what can a council do about those things? Because ultimately, that's what affects our lives, isn't it? It's not all this bullshit that they do in the background. What are your thoughts on that?
But well, normally the simplest solutions are the best.
Yeah.
You start off with ensuring that the people in those positions who make the decisions on that spend are professionals in that field.
Yeah.
We don't do that. Ours is based on friendships with no knowledge.
Don't politicians have like business consultants? Wouldn't they have someone who is experienced within the field that they're spending that budget on to consult and give them professional guidance on how to operate in that arena?
So clearly, councillors come in as the representatives for the people.
Yeah.
So they're voted into that position, and they're there as the to ensure that no impropriety goes on. The officers that are employed by the council should be the professional people, and are, you know, and no
Is that
way
like the CEO of the council?
that will sort of meander down from that. So, but there'll be professionals in every single area that are employed to do that job. The problem is that there is, and I'm going to use a word that I should never use, but there is a cancer within all government contracts and all government fields, and we know for a fact that government contracts normally are 2 to 3 times X what it should be in the normal standard sort of business world. And that's a fact. The problem is the councillors who are in that position, voted into that power, don't have the understanding and will caveat out those decisions to the officers who are in that mire of acceptability, because that's how it's ran and has been for many years. You can transcend that onto the people of the city. People in the city will say, oh, corruption goes on all over the world.
Isn't it just part of the system? Isn't the system itself corrupt?
Yeah, and I would agree with that. Yeah. But, you know, I do think Liverpool, you know, pool of life, is the position and the place to start anew, to turn this corrupt, broken system upside down and start again, to not keep on going on about trickle down politics, but to go on bottom up politics. We ensure that we look after the most vulnerable first, people who need to live in heated accommodation with food, without the need to beg, without the need to go out on the streets. I think Liverpool should be the first place and could be the first place. And isn't it strange that the timing has come to now where Labour Party are probably at its weakest based on its actions, and it clearly hasn't put anything in place to stop the thought of fraud and corruption, because that mechanism, as we said before, is still there, has been removed. And I think if Keir Starmer has let down the city, is he didn't come in and take anyone's knees that lived underneath that table of Joe Anderson away.
They've got to show that, at least make an effort to show that they're trying to clean it up rather than push it off into the distance and hope people just forget about it. I mean, because that confirms the allegations, doesn't it?
So that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
The more they find, the bigger the trough.
Yeah.
The more they got to get out, or do you just glaze over the top?
They've got to throw a bone. I mean, maybe Joe's the bone, but I mean, even it's not just the Labour Party, is it? There's a recent story, it might have only been yesterday, which Unite the Union, which is the financier of the Labour Party, under Len McCluskey's watch, there's now an investigation into a building that was bought for something like 90 million, wasn't it? The cost of it's only 30 million. But you can tell me the details in a second. But what I read in that article was that it's now being put to the police as a criminal investigation. Is that you know, there was all kinds of corruption going on in the Unite the Union?
Well, obviously, you know, I know exactly what that deal was all about. It's nothing to do with Liverpool City Council. It's to do with a union. It was reported that the hotel is worth 27 million, and they spent 112, still counting, on that building. I would argue that 27 probably isn't worth that now in the middle of this depression recession that we're in now. But the angle. Is
Unite the Union based in Liverpool?
Well, its head office is London.
Right.
And Len McCluskey is no longer.
No, but Unite the Union fund the Labour Party.
So Unite the Union fund the Labour Party to the tune of $4 million a year.
Yeah.
Len McCluskey ran the NEC, which runs all the nominations, and Len McCluskey, in my view, was the leader of the Labour Party and not Corbyn. But that's not Liverpool. I mean, yeah, it sins with Liverpool and it's to do with Liverpool business and whatever, but it's not Liverpool. It's not Liverpool City Council, and it's got nothing to do with Liverpool City Council. Liverpool City Council and how it's conducted itself has nothing to do with the union, apart from the union did buy a car park and other bits and pieces for 80k. That was probably worth £2 or £3 million, but still.
But wasn't Len McCluskey in with Derek Hatton and he was in with Joe Anderson? They were all in bed together.
They were, but that hotel is nothing to do with Liverpool City Council. Okay. So it's not part of the investigation. I believe it's got its own investigation going on, but it's not part of the.
It's another investigation.
Yeah, it's another one. But I just want to be very clear. It's nothing to do with councillors or the mayor in Liverpool. That's something totally separate.
Okay. So we've got this total. Corruption, we've got the cover-up, We've got the move to disband the mayor's office as a defensive action to prevent independents coming in to actually clean up Liverpool's political system.
Yeah.
And they've blocked that angle now, which makes it more difficult for independents to challenge Labour's monopoly over local politics. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. So what if we are to bring about political change in Liverpool? What are your ideas on how that is possible from an election point of view? How do you unseat Labour?
So I think you and I are the perfect example of us both feeling disenfranchised, disengaged. Our vote doesn't count. We have different ideas.
What's the point?
What's the point? And we've carried that same view pretty much all our lives. So it's speaking to people like us, the 85%, the forgotten, the people who don't get involved, and letting them understand the truth of what's transpired. To let the people of the city know that our politicians voted into power by the people have been stealing the food out of our children's mouths, because 30% of our children are still born below the poverty line. And we still scream from the rooftops about the government. And yes, I'm sure the government can do more. And yes, I'm sure they're at fault on many other things. But let's not bring that into the equation. Let's just look at our local governance and what they have done. They have ensured that money and properties have gone to friendships. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to dwell on that, but it's a fact. How do we take our city from this point now forward? And the only way to do that is to get the disengaged, disenfranchised, the people who don't feel like their voice counts, to get them to be rallied together, get them off that couch, and ensure that they wish to and want to vote.
But what would they vote for? Are you talking about an idea of an alternative political party to challenge Labour in an election, or challenge Labour and the Lib Dems?
Yes.
Okay.
So I believe Liverpool and the people of Liverpool, let's say there's 500,000 people. So the 85% of the 500,000 people, which is what, 425,000, can now be approached to bring a voice together based on anger on how they have been mistreated by the political powers that are in power and will be in power, in order for us to bring in a skill set based on the best of what we have and not based on the friendships of what we have, to bring about our own prosperity. So instead of us wanting to gift away our assets for naught to our friendships, which has clearly just happened, we then never sell an asset ever again. At this moment in time, we gift away assets for £1 because apparently the developer is at risk, even though in order to give it away for £1, the council and the council officers would understand exactly what that property was going to be used for. Therefore, because they're also in charge of the planning permission, they can then apply at least £20,000 in valuation to every single unit that's gained planning permission. So there's 100 units on this piece of scrap land that was sold for £1. It's then worth £2 million later on. If you follow the Nolan principles, which all councils should abide by, they have to always gain top of the pyramid best value. We have never gained best value, and we have never contracted up any issues with that developer at a later stage, i.e. you have this site, you've been given it for £1, we get you in some way that you are at, you've got an issue or might have an issue, or you might have funding problems, whatever it may be, but at some point there needs to be a flag in the sand when you must deliver that site, and if you don't, we claw it back with the planning permission and that value becomes ours, or a percentage of that becomes ours. That has never happened. That's a basic standard process within all councils. We didn't take it on board, because we've used delegated powers, which is a flimsy way to get something through council process, and not the council process which we should have adhered to. So on that basis, we could use it, and I've used this in the last podcast, we should be just like Singapore. 40 years ago, third world country, now it's the third best country to live in, because they never sold an asset and they developed it out with the people of the country gaining the best value, gifted out and distributed out to the government, to the people. And now per capita, per person, they have much more value on their heads than what we do.
It's crazy, isn't it? You know, I remember during Joe's reign that you'd hear him moan consistently about the budget deficit. That people were going to have to struggle because they didn't have enough money in the budget, or that people's council tax were going to go up, and that affects poor people, when they were letting millions, they were squandering millions in giving away assets of the city without generating the income that those assets could generate. They were just letting it go, you know, giving it away, you know, when they could have been, you know, charging millions for them. So it feels to me as if, you know, there's a lot more that competent management of Liverpool City Council could do in terms of a real change for people on the ground in the, you know, poor, deprived areas of Liverpool. But I think this idea that you've talked about here, which is starting an alternative political party, that's really exciting, because that's quite a development from one man standing alone in the mayoral contest, because even if you won as an independent, you'd still be an independent with a Labour council below you, wouldn't you? To a large degree. So I think this is an exciting development, because it gives an opportunity to build a bit of a movement rather than just one man taking on the system. So tell us more about that. I mean, have you got any ideas about moving that forward? Is this just in your head at the moment, or is this something that we're going to hear more and more about from Lawrence Kenwright over the next coming weeks, coming months?
So is the glass half full or half empty? So I'm a half full guy. So I don't necessarily see the past as an enormous negative. It is a negative, of course it is. But it is also a catalyst to change. And we all know the system here has failed. So what is that catalyst, and how does that work? Well, we now understand totally what's just gone on. It mightn't have been proven with charges or arrests yet, but it is clear what's happened. And it is clear when Joanne Anderson, the sitting mayor, says,
mayor.
Well, she is appalled by what went on. She stated that, and she put that in the Echo. I do believe that this city can go on to greater things. Whether it's me, I don't think it probably will be me. I think it should be democratically placed between the new councillors.
Leader of a new party.
Yeah. So look, I'm coming with an idea which brings together many separate factions in together as one, almost against the Labour Party, because of the way it's treated the people that voted into power.
So a coalition in a sense.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that's me, and I am not a politician. You know, I am saying that I do think there will never be a better time now to turn over that apple cart and turn it in our direction as the people with the bottom-up politics. Let's not forget, Labour Party here is controlled totally by the Labour Party London Ivory Tower. Why am I saying that? Well, because the nominations that are getting picked now for next May are picked with a nomination of one, which means the local members, of which I am one, can now no longer pick the person that's going to represent me in the area that I live.
So it's even more centralised.
Well, it's not democratic either.
No.
Because those members are there to ensure that they pick, based on their local knowledge, the person who's best placed with the best local knowledge to look after the interests of the people who live in that area. Now we have a single person, and I won't mention her name, who comes in and dictates who that person is going to be, irrespective of the view of the members of the local party. So now Labour Party are no longer, in my view, locally democratic. It is hell-bent on a view based on London and not on Liverpool. And I think in order for Liverpool to understand its own problems, it has to be dealt with by people who are born and bred here. That doesn't mean to say that we can't have a politician who's born in a different country and comes over here. But what I am saying, I understand the system of Liverpool better than anyone
an outsider
will ever understand it, because it's part of my DNA.
Yeah.
And I care 10 times deeper than an outsider would. Fact. Now, they may disagree with that. I don't. So my desire to look after my city and the people of this city, I think, runs far deeper than than it would be with them. Now,
But
the
you're
next
not
leader,
going anywhere, are you?
No, but the next leader wasn't born here. But great, he's chose to live here. That's fantastic. But he wasn't born here.
No.
And I think in order to sort out our problems, we need to understand bottom-up politics first. So we need to deal with the problems of drugs and what that creates and the issues that creates. The problem that, you know, a mum hasn't got a husband and therefore has a singular wage or not a wage and is more worried about rats coming through a back door and feeding the kids and will she put the kids to bed at 4:30 because she can't afford to give them an evening meal. These are the situations that I know Liverpool councillors understand, but I also believe that there is part of our movement in Liverpool which now has been taken away from us. Is that because we're not trusted? Well, then if it's not that, then what is it? Why aren't we allowed to pick out who our next Labour councillors are going to be? And part of that is me saying I don't like an ivory tower in London with a nice posh accent telling me what I can and cannot do, albeit I'm not at the table. I would like to be at the table, and I would like to bring people of knowledge to that table, and I would like to create our own company, our own business, to generate our own profits, so we can look after the most vulnerable without being anchored by grant funding, which already gets given out to friendships based on that Labour ticket. I think everything needs to stop and start again. But if we had our own money, if we can go out and take those sites that were so freely given out to friendships to now be developed by our own business in a Gandhi style where no one ever looks at us, you know, the new party or whatever that may be, in any way being fraudulent or not allowing people to see behind the veneer. Total openness and transparency. And at the end of a couple of years, when the first sites are done, we can say there's 100 million. That 100 million gets shared out between the 30 wards. That's £3 million per ward per year. That's £60,000 a week to be distributed out by the new councillors in order to ensure that those communities stay intact, in order to ensure that that youth centre is opened up again, in order to ensure that that youth centre becomes a conduit to jobs and not to selling drugs on the street. These are the issues that I think need to be dealt with, and clearly haven't been. The Labour Party's been in power for 12 or 13 years. Has it done us any favours? Well, clearly not.
Cool. Great having ideas, and especially inspirational ideas, because that's what gets people going. But it wouldn't be the first independent party to challenge the Labour Party's monopoly in Liverpool. There's been previous examples, and maybe they're trying to be too similar to the Labour Party, but the Labour Party are an election machine. They know how to win, and they do so with just 15% of the vote, which shows how little people are interested in local politics, because they think, what's the point? It's either all corrupt or, you know, nothing's going to change anyway, so why do I even need to bother going out and doing a vote? Me personally, I wouldn't even know how to vote in a local election. Literally, I mean, I'm not on the electoral register. Right now, so I think it's great having this vision, and you need the vision in order to build any type of movement. But in terms of tactically, how would you go about overturning Labour's winning election demographic? What would you do? Because we had a meeting recently, didn't we, in Liverpool? We just met up for a coffee and a chat and a catch up, and we had a good conversation, and we were talking about this podcast, and just out of the blue, we were talking about this subject actually. We were talking about what would you do in terms of getting the vote out. We were in the middle of this chat, and this lad came up, and he just wanted to speak to you about saying, he was a load of respect for you and what you were saying about the city, and he went, I'd vote for you. And it was brilliant, because we were just talking about that topic at that moment in time, and he just came over independently and said that. I was like, wow, okay, well, maybe that's how you do it. What are your thoughts on? I know I'm not trying to box you in here with giving me your vision of how you do it. What ideas have you got in terms of how to get the vote out? To vote for a new political party against what is tribal loyalty in political parties. Do you vote for the Labour Party because your dad or your mum voted for them, or that's the only thing that you think is possible in Liverpool? That's, I think, the biggest obstacle and challenge that any new independent party faces in Liverpool?
Okay, so the older you go in age, the more you will find will vote for Labour in Liverpool. The younger you go, the more disengaged. We need to ensure that what has happened in the past is now coming out as factual. We need to make sure that everyone understands and knows exactly what's transpired over the last 10, 13 years. We need to wind up the people as much as we possibly can in order for them to gain the desire to go and find out how to vote. But then we also need to make sure that the 85 people, if we're lucky enough to get 85 people, who want to come to the fore, are there as the conduits of understanding on, one, how to vote.
So you need 85 people to stand in each ward during the election?
No. You need 85 people to stand in total, and you need, of that, you would need 43
to be
councillors in order for you to then lead the council. Now, I'm not saying that I want to be leader. I'm saying that I want to be involved in the development
of the party
in order to gain development of the sites, in order to gain what I'm going to aim at, which will be £100 million a year, to be gifted back to the wards of the city, because it is factually known that Liverpool has been city centre centric for the whole of the period of
the regeneration,
Joe Anderson's dominance and rule. I'm not saying he was wrong, by the way. I'm not saying he's wrong at all. First of all, you get your lead brand dealt with. Liverpool now is an amazing city. It's gone from rags to riches and done really well. I also believe that during that period, all of the wards were left and bereft of any funding. This initiative is about ensuring that we go out now to those wards,
which are desperately deprived.
But we make sure that we bring in the funds from the assets, which will probably be mostly derived from the city centre, but then equally distributed. There's 30 wards. Alton won't need that much.
They've had enough.
City centre doesn't need that much. There'll be various areas that won't need. Egbert might need that much, but there'll be various areas like Walton, like Everton, places like that, which will need an awful lot.
I think one of the key ideas that you've got with this new party, and I think it's interesting, is that Liverpool can generate its own income, right? And it can generate its own income from the use of its public assets and its building projects and its developments. And then what you're saying is that money that's generated from those projects can be distributed amongst the most deprived areas of Liverpool. Is that kind of one of the key ideas that you've got for this?
Yeah, so Liverpool's rich. But if you look at what's happened over the last couple of years, you would say we were extremely poor. And if you certainly looked at some of the wards, we are extremely poor in the realms of Europe. Some of the poorest wards in Europe. But actually, we have 15,000 properties as a council, and we own an immeasurable amount of land. That every single piece of land that before was given away for naught, once armed with planning permission, is worth an enormous amount of money. I'm saying that we never gift that away again. I'm saying that we develop it ourselves, and I'm saying that that money should go right into the most vulnerable wards.
So what's happening now?
Nothing. Any developments. The skill set isn't
They're just
owned.
selling the land to somebody else to make their own money from it.
It is known by the council. The council don't understand how to get anything off the ground. They are fearful of it, or they would rather not get involved and just give it out to friendships. That's what's happened in the past. Now what's happening is worse than ever, and this is where we do miss a mayor model, because a mayor would cut through the bullshit and make sure that he got it over the line, and that's where we do miss Joe Anderson for a fact. Our planning's gone from, on average, 13 weeks to now 2 years.
So maybe poor Joe's been wrongfully maligned. Maybe it was the energy and the drive that Liverpool needed.
I will be the first to defend Joe. Best mayor we've ever had. Just got taken down the wrong path. Best mayor we've ever had. We should never get rid of the mayor role model. That person has the power and the strength. One, ultimate power corrupts absolutely fact. But it's the person that was the issue, not the position. That position would ensure that the planners, who are now too scared now to make a decision, or want to make the bar so high that it's almost impossible to get over that bar because the costs that need to be applied are almost as great as the value at the end, which means no one's going to ever do it. All developments need to have a 30% margin there at least to start out with, and that gets eroded with additional costs. Our problem is, if you've got £10 million to invest into Liverpool in a development, because of the period of planning and how long it takes to get planning, and let's just say that £10 million is costing you 8% or 9% a year now, which it probably will do, and you know you're going to be stuck in a queue for 2 years, that's 1.8 million on your £10 million that you've just lost during the planning process. So you're not going to do that, are you? You're going to go to a city which is saying, come on guys, place your money here, we'll get your planning within 13 weeks, which actually is what Joe done at the start, and that's where he was amazing, by the way.
Business friendly can also mean to me is what you're saying to developers, look, you can make as much money as you want here, we're not going to take it from you, so the people of the city don't actually see it.
No. So look, Liverpool has an awful lot of land and buildings which are owned privately, which can be sold to developers to bring them into the country. What I'm saying is, in aid of openness and transparency and the fact of what's just gone on, we should, as a city, take on that Singapore model and say, now this is adopted by Liverpool City Council. We no longer sell anything. And if we do, we only sell it when it's got planning permission. We never sell land without planning permission. And with that, then we can then quite easily value. And with that value, you can discount that value if you wish, because you really like that developer or really like that site. But it is all on a website. It is all there to be seen, and it isn't cloak and dagger. I have spent the last 2.5 years looking at FOIs not being delivered by the council. They have broken the law on numerous occasions because they know if they tell the truth, it actually is putting a knife into their own throat.
About what?
On any developments that have gone on
building development,
how it's happened, what transpired, what was the cost paid, what was the CPO process, how much did they pay, why did they sell it the next week, why did they sell it for less than what they paid for it? All these.
So you've been through that one, haven't you?
all these transgressions are there to be seen, but can't be proven because the FOIs have not been answered. And that's another reason for the commissioners to take more control, because there hasn't been delivered. But now, because the Labour Party's looking after the Labour Party, so, you know, the inmates have got the keys to the cells.
Close the doors as well, haven't they? Yeah.
They're not going to want to answer the FOIs because of what's gone on in the past.
Of course, Okay, so let's move back to the political party, because that's what really interests me, is that is how you're going to bring that about. So you need to bring in 85 people to represent the party or the Liverpool during the next local elections. When is the next election? What time frame are you looking at?
Well, what we're about to see in May is something that we haven't seen here in my lifetime.
The next big elections.
Yeah. So normally what happens is 1/3 of the elections are every year and a fourth year out. So
so there's 3 councillors per ward. So there's always one of those.
There's always one,
being elected.
Apart from now, this May, every single council position is up for grabs.
So they're all up for grabs.
So that means
once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, that means that you have 85 beacons, as in 85 councillors, who are all, you know, beating to the same drum of stop fraud and corruption, New Dawn. Those councillors won't be bullied in the same way that people get bullied now when the Labour councillors clearly come after you, and it clearly stated in Matt Cole report how they created that their bullying antics and how they have caused the demise of individuals. I am the perfect example of that. I got bullied, I got beaten up, I got battered because I stood against the council in a naive manner. I'm not naive anymore.
Though, is there?
No, because you know, that created fire in my belly. And I think someone said the other day that I have an axe to grind here. Yes, I want to stop fraud and corruption. Yes, I want to ensure that the same people that have supported that fraud and corruption are no longer there or not in that powerful position to ensure that it continues on. It doesn't mean to say that I want to hurt anyone. You've heard me in this podcast now stating 2 or 3 times how great Joe was. I don't have an axe to grind with Joe Anderson.
Well, he's gone anyway, hasn't he?
Exactly, and I don't wish...
but an axe to grind gives you some motivation, in the sense that, you know, that's motivating you to do this, isn't it?
The axe to grind here is, I believe that this has been done for a reason.
Yeah.
I believe the 85% that have never voted before now have a unique reason to get off that bloody couch and go and vote. Yeah. And yet the same fire in my belly, I want to lighten theirs, because we can make a difference in the pool of life. We can make people believe that Liverpool can be the start of something brand new.
So I guess then, in some ways, this podcast today, this conversation we're having, is almost an appeal to people from Liverpool who are watching this that may share values and principles and ideas similar to yours, and they want to bring about change in Liverpool, but they don't know how. And they could, you know, become a part of this new party, this new movement, this new idea, and come and join the, you know, what it is that you're doing, and stand in as a councillor in May, because you need bodies, don't you, right now?
You do. So I'm not saying I'm the leader of that party.
No, but you're the one that's got the energy that's driving it at the moment, haven't you?
And there are other people out there, and there are plenty of other people that we're speaking to who may be leaders, who may take control of the party, who may want to take it on. My ego doesn't put me in that front post. My knowledge puts me in a place of delivering. I want to deliver what I know I can do. I know I can deliver buildings. I know I can deliver X amount every year to the most vulnerable, and I really want to make sure that I'm concentrating on that position. I don't really know whether my best position would be to lead, because I've never led before. Yes, I've got tenacity. Yeah, I've got drive. Yeah.
Well, you've led the company.
I think I'm intelligent enough to go and do that post. I think I have learned the process of politics over the last 2 or 3 years. Some would say baptism of fire. Absolutely, I feel I could do it, but I don't think I could do both. So if you ask me what would I prefer to do, I would prefer to just be left to deliver 100 million a year to the people of this city, to ensure that there are no gaps, to ensure that we're not going to a begging bowl to a Conservative Party that actually pours scorn on everything that we do.
Of course.
And you know, probably don't really want us to rise through. You know, it's probably a negative for the Conservatives to see what has been a left-wing ran almost view in a city, which they obviously are the opposite to. I believe that if we can pull this together, it isn't about me being the leader, it is about who wants to be leader, who can that be, and you know, based on the councillors that win their positions, because if they don't win the positions, if we don't get 43 of them in place, then really there is no party, because it'll just be a load of independents. Yeah, it will carry weight, but if Labour Party have 43 positions, that means that we will never get anything through.
So Labour Party need 43 seats in order to claim a majority.
Yes.
And then any new party needs to have 43 themselves.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And you need 85 people to stand. Is that to cover every ward?
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess the success of this project, it comes down to people, doesn't it? About people getting off their arse and being involved in the party first of all, right? Of wanting to give their time and ability and skill set to stand as a councillor in the Liverpool local elections in May under the banner of what it is that you're suggesting.
Yep.
Yeah. How would people go about joining that?
Leave a little message at the end of this podcast.
Okay.
And we'll get in touch.
Okay. So people who are interested in being a part
Leave
of
a
this,
message.
yeah, they can just begin by giving you a
But it isn't
shout.
me on my own.
No, of course not. But you're just at the moment, you're the one that's vocalising it and on this podcast, for at least. Have you got a name for the party yet?
We have.
Okay.
Not yet.
Hold that all back.
because this is a democratic process based on various people who are probably more knowledgeable than me in politics. who need to be brought to the table, who have been brought to the table, but actually we need to bring more people to the table, and in a democratic manner we need to decide what that's going to be called. I know what I want to call it, but it's not my party, it's the People's Party.
Yeah. Well, there's the name there.
There you go.
You just let that one leak there by mistake, didn't you?
Well, it might be. No, the point being that it mightn't be called that. It could be called that. That's for the various people that come to the table to decide what that should be. So this is very much an embryo. This is an amazing position based on what I believe is a local government that has been brought to account. I don't understand or know how severe that's going to be. I do believe personally it will be severe. I do believe the police are going to create charges and arrests, but I'm not privy to that, and I don't know that. All I know is there's enough out there to
I don't think it matters if they do or they don't.
But there's enough out there to state, people of the city, please understand what's gone on.
Yeah.
We all understand that people can be guilty but not found guilty in court. But we know they've done the act. So I believe that there are various people within the system which are extremely clever. I'm not going to name any names, but people have been to court before and got away with it in the same realm, in the same position. These people are very clever, very intelligent. I respect them for their intelligence. It doesn't mean they didn't do it because they don't get charged or arrested or don't go to court. We know what's gone on. It's all about, though, then reporting that in a factual manner to the people of the city to ensure that they have the same fire in their belly as I.
And giving them an option, because that's the problem, isn't it, with this democratic process? There is no option. And when there's no option, not only is that it drives apathy, right, and it drives demoralisation. Yeah, they want you to think they've got the chokehold, they've got the monopoly. They know that they can count on that 15% every time, because it's like people who vote in local elections at this point in time, they are party members, they are committed to the cause. They're the ones that get up and go vote in local elections. I don't know anyone that votes in local elections. So I think that's the biggest challenge. It's the biggest obstacle any new idea has to overcome, is how you get out the vote. Right? And I think doing things like this definitely going to help. But that's going to be, you need to peel off some Labour supporters, I think. People who are disaffected with the Labour Party and want new ideas and want to give someone else a go. But also, you've got all of those people, a bit like Trump did, didn't he, with his MAGA movement, is that a lot of people who voted for Trump had never voted in their lives. They'd never been near a ballot box. And he was able to motivate that base to the degree where he got them to go out and vote. And I think you've got to try and tap into that kind of consciousness within Liverpool, the city, is to get them out.
So I think we need to strip it back first. If Labour Party came out tomorrow and said, we know our frailties, we apologise for what's gone on, we will ensure that the team that sat within Joe's regime is no longer there. And we apologise.
You'd have a hard job then.
I think, well, I'd almost rally behind them. I am a Labour member. I'll probably be banned from Labour after this.
Is there any route back for the Labour Party in Liverpool?
So I believe if Labour came out tomorrow and apologised for their indiscretions, apologised for fraud, corruption, and absolutely opened the book. So the FOIs were all answered, so we understood exactly what's gone on. And we say that was the old, this is the new. And everyone that sat within Joe's world, his cabal, were gone. And a new bloodstream came in to take over with new ideas and push forward. As a Labour member, I would probably back it myself, and I would say, well, that's good enough. I'm happy with that. There's no need to then create a new party. There's no need to go against this regime. But they haven't, and I think I'm calling them out to do that. I'm asking them, please come out, tell us chapter and verse what's going on, admit to it all. And let's move on as a city, and then
because what
at
they're
least
doing
we
is
understand
covering it up at the minute, aren't they? They're not really dealing with the issues. Unless you think that they will have a change of heart as the closer we get to May, or do you need something like what you're talking about as a new party to challenge them in order for them to, make those moves?
Their place is deny.
Yeah.
And in time, people will forget, and it will just move on, and night will follow day. I don't want that to happen, because I think when things like this happen, they need to be measured and understood in order for history not to repeat itself. And we do know that ultimate power corrupts absolutely, because it's happened right the way through history. Since time immemorial, these things have happened.
Yeah.
And what I'm stating is, in order for that not to happen again, we need to make sure that the people who created that indiscretion actually are brought to account in whatever form. By the way, I don't want anyone to go to jail, don't want anyone to get into any huge trouble, but I do think it needs to come out, and I do think the people of the city need to understand in order for them to trust again. Now, if that happened, I would happily run behind Labour Party locally, and I would ensure that the people did as much as I possibly could. But I don't think that's going to happen, and I do believe that the city is going to meander downwards. We now have no investment coming in because of the planning process and how long it is. We now have to plant a tree with every single apartment that we gain planning for, which is £800, but a tree only costs £2 to plant. We have so much more costs applied to business. Like the hotel sector, worst sector hit in business, in the worst hit economy in Europe. And we've now got a third layer of taxation coming to us locally at a time when we need help. Everyone now is talking about hotel accommodation going downwards, coming up to one of the strongest periods, being Christmas. And there is an in-battle amongst hotels with their RevPAR, actually their price per room. And that's tumbling down. People are struggling in this sector, and yet we get told that the hoteliers, which I'm not part of, but the hoteliers have made a decision on for everybody about a new taxation, which is another level of rates in effect. So these things that are going on are based on friendships, based on a mini tribalism. Which has never been brought to account. And even though it's created the worst dynamic you could ever think of, which is fraud and corruption, actually, night follows day. There's no issue. And all I'm asking for is openness and transparency. Bring it all to the fore. Don't wait for the police to arrest and charge. Why do you want to do that? Just come out and state what's going on. We can then all rally together as Scousers and pull behind. But I don't think that's going to happen. And because that isn't going to happen, I think there's a need for a new political party to go up against the transgressions of an old one.
Well, I think that the idea of a new political party is good. I think regardless of whatever the Labour Party say, I wouldn't believe them to tell me at the time. But it's like on a national level, we need new parties as well, or a new idea, because this Tory government is obviously outrageously corrupt and running this country into the ground. But you think Keir Starmer's Labour Party is going to do any better? I mean, that's another.
Do you think Keir Starmer's Labour Party?
No, that's what again, we're only presented with this false choice. The Labour Party look like they're going to get in and remove Sunak from power with a massive majority, maybe a majority bigger than Tony Blair. And at least Tony Blair had some charisma, but Keir Starmer's got all the charisma of a dead cat. But it's like, so we're only presented with these false choices in order for these people to rule it over us. And I think ideas like a new party, a challenge to the hegemony of this two-party system, can only be a good thing, and I think you should do it.
well, Keir Starmer is Blair.
Yeah.
So,
but he doesn't have the personality of Blair. And that's what Blair's
same policies
was. Oh, again, he's just his protege.
He's right of left.
Yeah.
So, and I've got no issue with that, by the way, at all. And he's a very stable individual.
He's not a stable genius, though, is he?
He's obviously a genius. Head of CPS, and now about to be the prime. He obviously has something and some steely edge to him, because he's become the top of his arena twice. Don't forget, head of the CPS. His connections are unbelievable. He is the most powerful man in this country. Sunak isn't. Keir Starmer is. Now he's the most powerful man in this country. He is connected beyond that of a politician.
I don't think he makes any independent decisions. I think he's told what to do.
Yeah, and that may be the case. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, an extremely powerful individual who you wouldn't want to cross
No.
because of his connections. So let's just say Liverpool is the pool of life. Maybe this is the pebble that becomes that tidal wave, where the political system gets turned over in a very small corner of the UK. And because of the policy that we bring to the table and the clear win for the people of the city by ensuring that we bring funding that isn't anchored in a normal way and isn't anchored by the friendships that we've always seen, maybe this new system that gets brought actually can then be taken up by other councils based on how well it's portrayed, how well it works. And I believe that this maybe from a glass half full perspective has happened for a reason.
Okay, so before we wrap this up, let's just focus in again on what you talked about there, because I think this is central to your whole idea, isn't it? Is that this new system. And this new system, do you mean about how cities can become more financially autonomous?
Yes.
And generate their own income through running business rather than just distributing public funds? Is that what you say is the central idea of this political party?
So the devolution of powers, I absolutely agree with. I don't believe ivory tower politics should be there. I don't think London, as you know, it's a powerhouse. London, you know, brings in an awful lot of the economy for the UK. You know, we live off the money what London brings in. But I don't think it should be involved in politics locally, and to have the purse strings held by one part of the country and the decisions which have to go and beg for those purse strings to be opened up, I think is something that doesn't really work well. So it would be great to have those purse strings in with the same people that make those decisions on how those monies are distributed. So devolution of powers, I absolutely agree with. We're taking a back step now as a city. Yes, we have the Metro Emergency Rotherham, but the powerhouse within that regime is Liverpool City, and Liverpool City Centre would be the pinnacle of that powerhouse. The money that we could generate from Liverpool is enormous, based on its world brand. A lot of people argue with me over this all the time, but I've been all over the world, you know, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, all these places. And whenever you speak about Liverpool, Liverpool is known because of the Beatles, because of Liverpool FC. Manchester's not as well known, even though Manchester is the capital of the North. So Liverpool's branding is enormous. All we have to do is ensure that we, one, change the narrative. You know, this is not a corrupt city. This is an amazing city, great place to bring up families, great place to start your business off. We need to sing to the four corners about it's a safe haven for bringing your investment. And then we need to make sure that we develop for companies ourselves, and those developments, all of the funds go back into the local communities. Now, you look at Dubai, you look at Dublin. No, you look at Dublin. Dublin deemed as a huge success. Why is it a huge success? It's because its taxation went down to 15%, which meant that all the main huge companies of the world, Facebooks, Instagrams, YouTube, everyone put their head office for Europe in Dublin. Well, that done two things. One, it raised the economy up so far where the price is then raised to meet that. So now it's almost as expensive to live in Dublin as what it is in London. So we would say that was a huge success. But it's not to the local community, because now the local community can no longer live there because they can't afford to be there. So the new system that we'd employ would be that, yes, we will develop out our own units. But if you've lived there for 10 years, then you can get 25% off those units. And that 25% off, as long as you stay here for 5 years, you can cash in later on, which means then there's an anchor for you to stay within the city, and means that you can afford to still be here. Whereas in Dublin, no one can afford to be there anymore. So what is deemed as successful by the hierarchy, the 1%, is one thing. What is deemed by the local community actually is a failure.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, it sounds like it's a really interesting project, quite exciting, and I'm going to definitely keep my eye on it and keep chatting to you about it. When's the next big date in the calendar that people need to keep an eye open for in relation to this project?
January.
Okay. And then the elections are in May.
That's right.
Okay. So we're going to wrap this up.
Okay.
Before we do, if anyone's watching this and they're really interested in everything that we've been talking about, and you've motivated them not only to get out and vote, but also to support what it is you're doing, how can they get involved?
If they just leave their email
Have you not got anywhere to send it at the moment?
just email there, I'll pick it up from there, and then I'll answer it personally.
Okay. Where can people find you online, Lawrence?
I'm on Lawrence Kenwright on Instagram, and that's the only thing that I do.
Yeah.
I don't do anything else.
Okay, so have you got any final words before we finish?
I think for all the people that have always felt their vote was worthless, that they would just meander to the beat of someone else's drum, I think it's time for you to stand up and be counted. I think it's time for you to get off that couch. I think it's time for you to ensure that you are part of a movement that makes a change to not only your children, but their children's children. And I think Liverpool is the perfect place for change.
Lawrence Kenwright, thanks for coming on once again. I look forward to our next one.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.